Hi. Now let's have a look at the initiate and decide phase of the process. That is, what kind of information do you need to acquire? What kind of things will you need to consider and before you decide how to go about them in order to form a team? The context is that nobody is an expert in team formation. I think this is pretty true of industry. There is quite a sizable industry devoted to go and try to make a team a better performing team bonding exercises. But in the software development industry, you can't always take 3 days out to go on a abseiling course or a yachting course or something like that. But basically, you have to form your team where you are within days, not weeks, not months. A lot of this was looked at, among other people, by Watts Humphrey. Watts Humphrey ran the IBM software development labs obviously in the US, but he is probably more famous for developing the software capability maturity model. Once that was more or less established, he went on to consider, could there be such a thing as a maturity model for a team of one? And yes, there was, and he came up with something there. And then went on to think about were there things that a team had to do that an individual did not, and there were. So some of the things that a team has to consider are, what are the team goals? How are we going to make decisions? How are we going to resolve disputes? What standards should we use? How will we know what our risks are and how are we going to manage them? How will we know what the project status is? And what are we going to do about it when we find out what it is? So looking at some of the more important issues, we'll look at the team goals. In this particular subject, some of the more relevant team goals, this is aside from stakeholder goals or the project goals. The team goals include, what marks do you want for this subject? I mean, it's easy to say, well, yeah, we all want pass. Yes, but some people may want a high distinction. Now, if very few people want a high distinction, the rest of the group just wants to pass, then something's going to have to give, because it's very difficult to combine those two. Whatever it is, the team does need to discuss it and agree more or less what goal they're going for, what goals. Time management. How much time can you afford to spend on this particular project? I can tell you that the budget for any one subject is 10 hours a week per student. This is outside class. Now, this is a two subject course, a 12 credit point subject, so it counts for 2, and your budget is 20 hours a week. Now, how many people are able to spend 20 hours a week on this subject? Who can spend less? Who can spend more? If you really want really good marks, then it's going to take a lot of time, and can you afford that amount of time? In learning, some people particularly want to learn some particular aspect of software engineering. Most people seem to go crazy on programming, but I can assure you that this is not a programming subject. This is a software engineering subject, and the whole point is to show you how software itself is developed from beginning to end. Only a small part of that is programming. There are a whole lot of things that different people might want to do, including such things as testing, user interface design, software architecture, database design, even documentation. Some people might want to find out more about that. But there are different things that some people might want to learn, and it'd be nice to know that at the start. What kind of a system do you want to deliver? The subject only requires something that functions. Much more than that is not actually required. But you could, for your own satisfaction, produce the slickest, most usable, maintainable system that anybody's ever seen. And you're most welcome to do that, but the whole group needs to decide, yes, that's what we're going to do. Other goals There aren't necessarily social goals involved. Some people do want to meet people and make friends and form quite a cohesive social group out of this team, because it will be quite a strenuous exercise as a team, and this can be something useful in the future. So that's goals. You may have others, but and you may not want to consider all of those, but there are some that you should think about. Now let's have a look at decision making. This one seems to crop up quite a lot, simply because there are different ways of making decisions. Now, it does seem to extend from, at one end, the country club school of decision making, through to the other end, where you get the absolute dictatorship. In the country club school of decision making, nobody actually makes a decision. Everybody just sits around and discusses it until some sort of consensus seems to emerge. And everybody's happy, but it takes a long time, and decisions are not usually that good. But everybody's happy. The other one, dictatorship, is very efficient, but not particularly enjoyable. I have had the privilege of watching both extremes, not quite out of the extreme, but close enough, in operation in the same semester. And it was interesting. I mean, both groups didn't score very well. But the team leader, who is much more collaborative and inclusive, did in fact get much better marks than the other team. I think the difference is about an average of 5 or 10 marks. And his team had much greater experience. He seemed to be able to include everybody. The other team was in almost open revolt by the end, but they all got through quite well. Now, the conflict management is something you're going to have to deal with too. I hope you don't have open conflict, but you will have conflict of ideas, where I think it's almost inevitable, with the number of different tasks there and the fact that it's all set up in such a fashion, that you're going to have to make trade-offs between the different attributes of the system. That you are going to have different beliefs about how things ought to be done. And so this level of conflict management you will have to manage. And it's a good idea at the start of the project to try and determine how you're going to manage that conflict, rather than wait until you're actually in the conflict itself, when all too often it just descends into power plays and shouting. So that's not so good. Now, in my experience, the conflicts have arisen because one or other person doesn't think they've been listened to. Try to listen. Listen to everybody's view. Try to understand everybody's view. Use reflective listening. That is, listen to the person and then say back to them what they just said, but using your own words. I mean, don't parrot it, that's insulting. But demonstrate to them that you've not only listened, but you've understood. Then at least everybody has had their say, and everybody is more likely to accept the decision that is made by the group. So that seems to work pretty well. So there you have most of the things that you need to deal with in the initiate and decide phase. That is some of the team goals, some of the matters internal to the team, but of most concern are the team goals, the decision-making method, and the conflict management method.